Welcome to I Want That, which is an ongoing series here at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, a show that focuses on the dynamic world of Disney merch. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and joining me now is Disney expert Shelly Valladolid.
Hi there.
And we are recording this on Thursday, July 16th. And yes, I know it's been quite a while between shows here, folks, but you have to remember that the Disneyland Resort closed its 2 theme parks back on March 14th, and then Disney World then closed its 4 theme parks a day after that, and then on March 17th, the Walt Disney Company announced that it was closing all of the Disney stores in North America. So at that point, it got a little tough to do a show about Disney merch. But Shelly came up with a very interesting workaround. Do you want to talk about your wine idea?
Yes, I ordered some wine from Silverado Vineyards, Ron and Diane Miller's winery up in Stag's Leap.
Now that fun fact, the piece of property that Ron and Diane bought back in the 70s actually was owned by the Seas family.
I did not know that. I love Seas candy. The nuts and chews, man.
Yep.
They're the best.
Anyway, so the idea was they wanted someplace quiet, someplace far away from the hustle and bustle of Burbank. They buy this place, and I think you were mentioning that at least initially they were selling the grapes back to
They were selling them to several wineries in the area, and they finally decided in '81 that they were going to go on it for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of interesting because after all those years working at Disney, it wasn't enough just to build a vineyard, so to speak. It had to look like it had been there forever. It was themed, so they went with a California Mission style series of buildings. And in fact, what's kind of interesting is if you talk with the locals, a lot of folks think that it's been there forever, but it was actually, like you said, I guess they started building it in 81 and really got serious about it in 84 when, Ron was pushed.
When he was pushed out. When you went to visit, how did it look?
It was charming. I mean, Nancy and I went there, I want to say in 2002, had these buildings that looked like they'd been there for 200 or 300 years, and then you'd come inside, and it was all state-of-the-art modern equipment. Though I think the most memorable part of the visit is he then took us into the tasting room, and I want to say Silverado Vineyard had just started doing these wine-filled chocolates. And I want to say it was port, because these things were really, really powerful. And he's like, well, try this one, try this one, try this one. And, that was what we were doing in the morning. And in the afternoon, we were supposed to be over in Santa Rosa to go to the Charles Schulz Museum. I want to say whatever the equivalent of Waves was back then, I said, it's only 27 miles. And it's okay. So we say goodbye to the vintner. We climb in the car. But it's 27 miles on twisty, turny roads. And in the middle of, driving, the phone rings, and it's our friend Jeff Lang, and he's, how are you doing? And it's like, oh, we're doing great, and so nice of you to call so you can tell the authorities where to find our bodies, when we miss a turn and go off into a ditch. Anyway, let's talk about the wine. What did you get?
I got a limited edition Silverado Cabernet, and I don't have the bottle anymore, which I should have at least taken a picture of the label, but I didn't. So I can't tell you exactly what, but it was $75. It was really, really, really good. I took it over to my mother-in-law's house. She lives across the street, so we're together as a family with all the masks and everything. Yeah, we had it with olives and cheese, and oh boy, what a good wine.
Now, what's kind of interesting is that you mentioned the $75 price point. The interesting thing is if you actually go to the Silverado Vineyard page, they have individual bottles starting as low as $28 for a Cabernet Sauvignon. There's a $35 Pinot Noir. But you're right, the higher-end bottles do of the more limited vintages, mind you, do start at $75 and can run as high as $200 for an individual bottle. But for those of you looking for value, I guess the best values would be they offer mixed wine sets. That's 6 bottles for $275, and they have
that's a great deal.
6 bottles of red that are supposedly truly superb for $300. But again, if you're a Disney fan and want an interesting bend on the company history, they do tastings there on the grounds. Now, mind you, reservations are required, and in fact, here's the boilerplate from the actual Silverado Vineyard wine site. They describe a Silverado experience, which is our hosted, seated tasting. It's supposedly the best way to enjoy the views of the Stag Leap District as you sample our small production estate-grown wines. Tableside service from a host will introduce you to our history, winemaking styles, and the unique characteristics of each wine. And that is $55 a person. They're limiting it to groups of 6 with conditions that anyone who's taking part in the Silverado experience must be 21 years of age. And this says a lot that they had to include this as language. We regret that pets cannot be guests. So I would imagine a lot of people are bringing service animals with them to Silverado. I bring this up because, face it, California's been kind of going back and forth with COVID.
Well, yeah, that's kind of part of the reason why I bought the wine when I got the email from them, was because this wine is served at Carthay Circle, it's served at Yachtsman Steakhouse. You can find it all over Disney property, and it was just like a nice little throwback.
Oh, definitely. If you want to drive up to Napa, the problem is right now there were so many mixed messages. I mean, for example, back on March 16th, Governor Newsom ordered all bars, wineries, and brew pubs closed. Then, what was it on June 5th? He said that wineries and tasting rooms could reopen when permitted by the counties and when they were issued state guidance for the health and safety of visitors and employees. But then just earlier this week on July 13th, due to a resurgence of COVID out in California, Governor Newsom ordered wineries and tasting rooms closed again, along with certain malls. So I guess, long story short, folks, give Silverado a call to find out where exactly they fall. The last time I looked at the website, they were still offering people the opportunity to book the Silverado experience, but there was also language that said this situation is constantly evolving. Something should change at your end or ours. Any reservation will be fully refunded if canceled within 24 hours. So
that's good to know.
But worst case scenario, you can always do what Shelly did and order yourself a couple of bottles, and you can have that Yachtsman or the Napa Rose experience right there at home. So get yourself some olives and cheese. All right. Okay, but that's the West Coast. On the East Coast, getting back to how this went down in March. That everything closes down, but by the middle of May, we had City Walk at Universal Orlando partially reopened. It was just select restaurants and stores. The following week, on May 20th, we had Disney Springs reopened, but in that case, again, not necessarily all of the Disney-operated stuff. It was the third-party operating participants. And finally, a week later, on May 27th, World of Disney at Disney Springs reopened. I don't know about you, Shelley, but have you been getting questions about why it is that Universal, or at least in Florida, was able to open so much earlier than, say, Walt Disney World?
Do the math. It's the numbers.
Yeah, it is. It's a question of scale. I mean, face it, Universal, with its 2 theme parks and 7 on-site hotels scattered over 840 acres, that's basically a small town. Whereas Walt Disney World, with its 4 theme parks and its 34 on-site hotels, 28 of which are owned and operated by Disney, on 25,000 acres. That's more of a full-size city. In fact, what's especially been kind of interesting was, that when you think about Universal, when it would call everybody back, that would be 27,000 team members. Whereas Walt Disney World, that's 77,000 cast members. And if you think about having to retrain all of those people in the new COVID safety procedures and all that, that's a little daunting. June 1st, we had the Universal Studios Florida and Universal Islands Adventure reopen for team members and their families. On June 2nd, we saw select hotels at the Universal Orlando Resort reopen. And then on the 3rd and 4th of that month, the theme parks open to hotel guests and annual pass holders. And finally, on June 5th, all of the Universal Orlando Resort reopened to the general public. Meanwhile, down the street at Disney, on May 27th, Walt Disney World submits a plan to the state of Florida for the phased reopening of its theme park. July 11th, Walt Disney World and Animal Kingdom were scheduled to reopen. And then on July 15th, in fact, just yesterday, Epcot and Disney's Hollywood Studios reopened. And that was basically a full 6 weeks after the Universal Orlando Resort reopened. Meanwhile, out in California, Disneyland Resort announced on June 10th its phased reopening plan, which called for downtown Disney Anaheim to reopen on July 9th. Disney's California Adventure and Disneyland Park opening on July 17th, just in time for the Disneyland 65th birthday. And then finally, Disney's California Resort and Spa, along with Paradise Pier Hotel, were supposed to reopen on July 23rd. But that didn't happen, did it,
No,
Shelly?
it did not.
Yeah. Okay, the way this basically went down, what was it? On July 24th, the state of California, I guess, reached out to attractions up and down the state and basically said, we're not going to provide you with guidance about how to open, theme parks and, aquariums and museums and the like until sometime after July 4th.
Right.
Which is why then the Walt Disney Company announced that the two Disneyland theme parks and the two hotels at the Disneyland resort they were going to reopen. Kind of interesting that they held back the actual Disneyland hotel, don't you think?
I do. I wonder why.
Anyway, so they announced that all of those properties would be closed till further notice, and the rumor was that going forward that they'd shoot for an August 1st reopening. But like I said, given Governor Newsom's decision this past Monday to close indoor businesses across the state, including restaurants, as we mentioned earlier, wineries, movie theaters, zoos, and museums, that really makes the August 1st opening sound like wishful thinking.
Well, I had heard that they were going to take reservations starting August 1st.
Okay, well, let's hope that that's going to happen. But what's kind of interesting, again, remember that Disney made this announcement on June 24th, and there was much complaining, about that we're not going to get into the park, but Orlando's going to get into the park. And interesting thing, Disney, like every other major corporation, when you have bad news, you try to counter it with some good news. So on June 25th, the very next day, is when word dropped about the redo of Splash Mountain, with the idea that the two stateside versions of this flume ride would soon be retooled around a Princess and the Frog theme.
That's going to be so good.
Now, had you been following that with the Change.org stuff?
A little bit. I listened to this great podcast called The Disney Dish with Jim Hill and Len Testa. And
those idiots. Yeah.
No way. I love them both.
Okay.
And the description of the ride that you give on there is, I want to ride it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Now, again, you pay attention to the company, and you must have heard what Bob Chapek said a couple of weeks ago to the effect of, in fact, I think it was during the most recent quarterly earnings call, where they had just put a stop to $900 million worth of projects that were in the works for the parks. And it's kind of interesting, just over the last 24 to 48 hours, we've had some information about what got cut.
Yeah, the festival center.
In fact, the F Festival Center.
That was so cool.
It was a cool idea. It genuinely was.
Well, no good idea ever dies at Disney, right?
I'm still waiting to be able to check into the Persian resort. That's the thing. The Festival Center is being reimagined, where, on the other hand, construction of the Mary Poppins attraction that was supposed to go into the UK, that's been postponed.
Now, what was that supposed to be?
Well, see, now that's part of the problem. That everybody I've always talked with about the Poppins attraction, that there was a belief that Mary Poppins Returns was going to be a far bigger hit than it actually turned out to be. Don't get me wrong; it's a wonderful film. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's a worthy sequel to the original 1964 film. But it just did not. Disney thought they had yet another $1 billion earner, and I want to say it topped out internationally with both domestic and international worldwide gross somewhere in the 300s, and that's really not enough. So it went. There was one iteration of this thing. If you remember, in Mary Poppins Returns, there was right across the street from 17 Cherry Tree Lane. There was a spring fair, right. And there was a carousel and a Ferris wheel. And, the notion, one version of the plan had it that they were going to put those flat rides in, which would give Epcot a little bit more capacity, per hour.
Something kid-friendly.
But and also what they were going to do is basically take the side of the UK pavilion that faced into that side and retheme it around Cherry Tree Lane. So you'd have Admiral Boone's house next to where the Banks lived, and there was going to be a meet and greet in there. In fact, at one point, because they'd so convinced themselves that Mary Poppins Returns was going to be a giant hit, they were going to do sort of the Anna and Elsa's summer house thing, where there were 3 separate sets of Annas and Elsas to meet with, which allows you to pump that many more people through.
What?
Yeah. So yes, that's how that building is set up there. And I'm sorry if I just blew something for small children. Anyway, so there were at least going to be 2 Marys and Jack, not Bert. Again, the Jack, not the chimney sweep, the Jack of all trades. Then the plan got bigger. Then when the film came out, the plan got smaller. And I think that was another thing that kind of bit them in the butt, was they had never actually locked down a design, or for that matter, a budget. Similarly, a redo, in fact, the redo that Bob Chapek made a very big deal about at the last D23 Expo, retooling Spaceship Earth around storytelling. That's off the table as well. That's been postponed. And just today, word also came down that Primeval Whirl at Animal Kingdom,
Rivers of Light,
Rivers of Light.
No big surprise, Stitch.
Well, I think people had already been inside of Stitch and showed that the theater was basically dismantled.
Right.
So, we're not really surprised they came back. Rivers of Light, on the other hand, I want to stress here that the show is going away, but the giant orchid fountains that were featured in the show, again, this is a giant blank piece of canvas at night.
It is.
The lagoon space there at the Discovery River. And so the plan is now, I guess, that at twilight each night they're going to take the 4 orchids that were part of the mechanical orchids that were part of the show and float them out into the lagoon into space, and then they'll just kick them on with their lights and their fountain function. So they will be something pretty to look at. But yeah, the boats and the animals and all that they're not coming back. But now to pivot back to the Princess of the Frog thing, $900 million worth of construction has been paused. The idea that people heard the thing about the Princess of the Frog redo and thought, oh my God, they're closing that attraction tomorrow, and they're gonna and we'll have a Splash Mountain will be gone, and in a year we'll have Princess of the Frog. No, that's not what's going to happen. But that certainly didn't stop. Again, July 7th and 8th.
Cast members and annual passporters went crazy.
Yeah.
Lost their damn minds.
They were the first people through the door, and basically a good portion of them marched straight to the Briar Patch at the Magic Kingdom and bought tons of Splash Mountain merch with the idea there, and again, they bought it with both their annual pass holder or their the cast member discount,
which you're not supposed to do. With the idea of
taking it home, which you're not supposed to do. Now, to be fair here, this was not just an East Coast phenomenon, because on Wednesday, July 8th, we had the cast member preview of Downtown Disney Anaheim. And you probably saw the same videos that I did on Twitter of, the folks mobbing the pile of Disneyland limited edition 65th anniversary.
Yeah, and on Facebook already, it's coming your 25th or your 65th anniversary merchandise on hand. And there's one guy on Facebook, I don't know if you knew about this, selling jars of Splash Mountain water for $300 each.
Yeah, and it just reminds me of the...
Bruce Gordon is somewhere going, nah.
Yeah. What Shelley's referring to is the late, great Bruce Gordon. When he was a kid, before he became an Imagineer, he wanted to build a jungle cruise at home. And so he studied the maps, he studied the photos, he used plaster of Paris, and he built himself a model of the the layout of the Jungle Cruise. And to make it as authentic as possible, the next time he went to Disneyland, he took one of those little pint of milk waxed containers with him and stuck it when the skipper wasn't looking, stuck in the water, and brought home authentic Jungle Cruise water for his his miniature Jungle Cruise at home. So yeah, I miss Bruce.
Me too. He had an impressive collection of dirt too.
Yes, he did. No disrespect to people who ran into the park, who grabbed this merch, who went home and thought, I'm being really clever, I'm going to put this up on eBay. And I'm sure the very first folks who put up the $24 Brer Rabbits for $150, I bet there were a couple of takers.
Oh no, one or two of them sold out at like $300 each.
But here's the thing, okay? At this point now, there's a lot of people who had the same idea. There's a lot of people who especially on the East Coast, who put this stuff up. $900 million worth of construction paused. This Splash Mountain Princess of the Frog redo isn't happening anytime soon. In fact, the earliest I've heard that the attraction will close is 2022.
Me too.
So
I just feel sorry for the people who were dumb enough to buy it at that price.
Well,
I feel sorry for him.
I'm actually more look, people all over the United States who have giant plastic bags full of Beanie Babies that they bought, sure that was going to be a great investment, and that didn't pan out. So I just want to warn anybody who's thinking about getting in on this and speculating. Look, Disney will do its own wave of limited edition merch as we get close to the actual closure of Splash. You may remember just recently it's a wrap T-shirts that were done for the closure of the Great Movie Ride. I think there were coffee mugs and stuff like that. So anticipate, good something. In fact, I think somebody was saying they were talking with the people at Maxwell House about "Good's the last drop." It's like, could we use that catchphrase?
That's cute.
Yeah. So, but anyway, all right. So, but yeah, seriously, folks, just be careful. You want a Brer Rabbit plush and all that, go to the park. It'll still be $24.99. Don't spend.
Or if you can't get in the park, go to World of Disney or shopdisney.com. They're going to be on there. They're not on there right now, but they will be on there. The Wishables, I think, are on there.
The actual physical Disney store began reopening at various malls around the country. In fact, our local, Merrimack Premium Outlet, the Disney store there, opened on Wednesday, July 8th, and Nancy and I went there to check the place out. Did the whole mask, hand sanitizing thing. Yeah, kind of interesting. The store capacity, at least for this particular outlet store, was set at 30. And since there were 5 cast members on the floor at any one time, that meant only 25 guests could get in. And there was literally a person working the door who would hold folks back. They think, nope, gotta wait. But the interesting thing, this cast member was also standing next to a rolling cart that had a huge bottle of hand sanitizer on it, along with a pile of face coverings. And notice the phrase face coverings, not masks, because, making people wear a mask makes them mad. But evidently making people wear a face covering, it's like, well, okay, all right, I'll wear a face covering.
Makes perfect sense.
The store itself had the exact same number of displays and fixtures, but they'd been moved around in such a way to allow for the 6 feet of social distancing. And more to the point, there were lots of signs on the floors and on displays, reminding guests to please stand 6 feet apart. There was a video display behind the cash ramp that rotated through a number of messages, which I thought were kind of interesting. Key among these was in-store events have been postponed until a future date. So I think we talked on an earlier show about like the Disney Wisdom series, which would, debut new items every month. And I want to say there was that brand new Mickey or Minnie series. But they told folks to check out the store locator for updates on events in the future. Also warned people that product availability will vary, that some limited edition, limited release items will not be available in the store at this time. And as Shelly just pointed out, you should probably look for those items at Shop Disney. And then just like everywhere else you go these days, the cast member who was working behind the cash wrap had a giant piece of plexi that separated them between, them and the guests. And anytime a transaction was completed, they then wiped down the counter and, the credit card reader. Not the perfect setup. In fact, the cast member pointed out to me that, for example, in order to create these 6 foot wide, social distancing aisles, they did things like they had to put the clearance items right next to a display of full price items, which confused a number of guests and made for some awkward, dealings at the cash wrap. You kind of felt bad for them, that for example, Easter was back on April 12th, but of course the store had closed on March 17th. So they had a lot of, Mickey dressed as a bunny and Stitch dressed as a bunny plush that they were trying to move, weeks after Easter for $5.99 a piece. Likewise, a lot of discounted Frozen 2 merch. In fact, Nancy picked up a sleep shirt that had the Snow Queen version of Elsa along with the Knock, the water horse. That had been marked down for $8, and we got our Disney Visa discount to knock that down to $6. Interesting, they still had a display up for Onward, hyping that Pixar film's March 6th release date, and those items were still full price. Worth noting that there was nothing on the shelves for Black Widow and Mulan, and I bring that up because obviously Disney's pushed their release dates on those 2 films, but what I find interesting is that Universal did the same thing for Minions: The Rise of Gru, which was originally supposed to open in theaters earlier this month and has now been pushed back a full year till July 2nd, 2021. But if you go to Target right now, they have toys on the shelf for Minions: The Rise of Gru.
They also have the Splash Mountain Song of the South Funko Pops.
It's good that Michelle has pointed that out, because that set, the 3 set of Funko Pop figures, which was created for the 30th anniversary of the opening of Splash last year, they're selling it at Target for $45. However, if you go online, you go on eBay, that set is now listing for $500. So thanks to Shelly for pointing that out. But seriously, folks, do not, don't spend top dollars for these sorts of collectibles. Anyway, it was kind of intriguing to me that Disney was able to step into its retail chain. Because face it, with these big films like Mulan or Black Widow, the way Disney works is typically 6 weeks before the film arrives in theaters. The first wave of merch hits store shelves. So, the early adopters can get themselves a Black Widow t-shirt or a Black Widow, or a Mulan t-shirt or that sort of thing. And Disney was able to stop these. Somewhere there's a warehouse full of this stuff right now, waiting for when Disney will decide to, finally put these in theaters. And did you see today the investor who's writing about the Disney stock and, what he was hearing from the company? That they think that it's not going to be till mid-2021 before we get back to a normal movie theatrical experience, which means...
Yeah, sounds about right.
It just with Disney, with these giant blockbuster tentpole films that, the only way you make $1 billion is if you open in theaters worldwide. That potentially means that, Black Widow and Mulan are going to sit in the vault for, another 11 months.
Well, didn't they do that with Rise of Gru?
Minions: Rise of Gru, yeah. But again, that they
like 2 years?
Bobbled Disney's doing what it can, because, obviously so many of us are now shopping online, and which has led to a certain amount of frustration with limited edition stuff. But when we get back, Shelly's going to talk about a brand new program that Disney's instituted that hopefully will take some of the frustration out of that.
This episode is brought to you by Battlefield 6. Battlefield 6 is the ultimate all-out warfare experience. Rip through the skies in aerial dogfights. Demolish your surroundings for a strategic advantage. Harness complete control over every action and movement using the kinesthetic combat system. Drop into multiplayer with your squad, or fight furiously as a member of the Dagger 1-3 squad in a gritty, adrenaline-fueled single-player campaign where you'll defend a world on the edge of collapse.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
And we're back. Okay, so on a couple of our earlier I Want That's, Shelly and I talked about limited edition items that Shop Disney was offered to regular folks like us, but that we never really had a shot at, largely because the eBay pirates would swoop in and immediately claim all of the available items. In fact, what was the most recent one?
It was the Mickey Tiki.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And face it, this has been a frustration within the Disney fan community for a number of years now. Because, of course, once these items sell out, the only way you're able to claim this collectible for your collection is to go, on this, to the secondary market, where you then end up paying multiples of the original asking price in order to secure it. And again, just don't do that with the Splash Mountain stuff. But, okay, so, Shelly, talk to me about this new thing they're doing, the early access drawing system.
Okay.
Merch Pass?
Do you remember at D23 when they did Merch Pass?
To be honest, I don't shop at D23. It's the 4 and 5 hour long lines that kind of broke my will. So, but talk to me. What is
You had an
Merch Fest?
appointment time, and that's when you could go get your merchandise without having to wait in a 6-hour-long line. With Merch Pass online, it's a little different, but still kind of the same backbone. And what it is you register with Disney.com if you haven't, shopdisney.com if you haven't yet. You will get an email that tells you when you can go in and try to get in line for this. And it'll have a time on it, say 2 p.m. So you go into the app and you put your limited edition item in your bag, and then you check back by that time, like by 2 p.m., and you'll see either sorry or go ahead. If you get go ahead, you go into your app, the item's already in your bag, and you can pay for it.
Just to stress here, this is really, taking the 20,000-foot view, this is kind of a lottery, right?
Yeah.
You're not guaranteed if you sign up.
And you don't have to buy it if you get chosen. If you choose not to by 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever time is on your email, then you drop out and it goes to the next person who signed up behind you.
Also, something worth noted, you have a limited time window in which to buy this, right?
Yeah.
If you don't move quickly, you could, and even though you still have it in your Disney bag on the Shop Disney page, you could still lose this.
Right. You can buy other items. You're not rushed to just push the button. If your time is 2 o'clock and you log in at noon, you can shop at your leisure. And as long as you've got that payment in by before 2 o'clock or whatever time, it's yours.
What's kind of intriguing to me is Disney seems to be trying to placate, obviously, the collectors who feel like, they've unnecessarily been in competition with the eBay pirates, but at the same time they're trying.
Well, they have bots, so in a nanosecond they can buy 600 items.
Well, but what's kind of interesting is they will, if take for example, I remember, what was it, the rose gold mini ears that also disappeared in a second.
Yeah.
What they say here is that you can use this early access drawing system to request more than one limited edition item, but there is a limit of 1 entry per product per person.
Yes.
So I don't entirely understand how that works, but I guess you can put in multiple
accounts
requests. Folks should be careful of is that face it, when you're setting this up, given the way email works, you want to keep an eye on your spam and promotions folder.
Definitely.
Because the first time this comes through, it could, end up getting filtered there. So, be sure, especially first time around with Merch Pass, to keep an eye on that. When in doubt, you can go to the Shop Disney FAQ page, and, they'll walk you through this new early access drawing system.
Just do a Google search for Shop Disney Merch Pass.
So, we were just talking about Mulan and the new live-action version, which, again, it in a different world. That was supposed to open in March 27th of this year. Due to Corona, the release date got pushed back to July 24th. And then when it became obvious that theaters, especially in California and New York, were going to be able to be ready to open by that date. And those are two of the biggest film markets in the U.S. So it just, if you can't open in New York and L.A., it just didn't make any sense to open the rest of America. So release date of Mulan got pushed back yet again to August 21st. And as we were just talking about with Governor Newsom ordering, just yesterday about the closure of indoor businesses, restaurants, movie theaters, and bars, it really seems kind of unlikely that in 5 weeks' time, this Nikki Caro movie is actually going to be able to open in theaters. And I think as we mentioned about that investment analyst who just today was saying, the exhibitors telling me that we're not going to be really returning to a normal movie-going experience to mid-2021. I would honestly be surprised now if we saw Mulan and Black Widow open, in the latter half of 2020. On the other hand, if you are a collector and, are itching to get into the Mulan business, let me float an idea to you. There's still a lot of stuff out there from the original 1998 animated film. In fact, there's one particular set of collectibles that are surprisingly affordable even today. Shelly, do you remember when Mulan came out that there was this big campaign for the film tied to Aquafresh toothpaste?
I can't say that I remember the Aquafresh campaign, but I do remember the scene it was based on.
Yes, well, that's what Shelly is referring to. And if you remember Mulan, there was a scene where after a long day of army training, Mulan, who's been masquerading as a man, slips off from the training camp and finds a lake, stripped down, and goes for a nice, refreshing swim. But the problem is that the gang of three, what is it? Shen Po, Yao, and I want to say Ling. They too come down to the lake and strip down, and they're in the water swimming with Mulan. And Mulan is desperate to get away from them because she doesn't want them to discover that she's not, a man. And Mushu comes to her rescue. Mushu swims up to Ling and bites him in the butt. And Ling gets a quick look at Mushu and it's a snake. And so the next thing you see, it's Yao and Chen Po and Ling. They've clambered up on a rock to get out away from the snake. And Mulan uses this moment to slip out of the water and grab her towel, and she's able to sneak away. But at this moment, there's this great little bit of animation where Mushu comes out of the water, but he's got a tube of toothpaste in one hand and a toothbrush in the other, and he's frantically brushing his teeth. And it's like, that was nasty. That was disgusting. You owe me big time. It's a great little gag. It's a fun little moment, and Eddie Murphy turns in a fun vocal performance then. So anyway, the gags in the movie, they're in production when Tony Bancroft and Barry Cook, the two directors of Mulan, get a call from Peter Schneider, who was the then president of Walt Disney Feature Animation. And Peter wants to have a meeting with Tony and Barry. So they sit down. The Schneider sits down with Bancroft and Cook and explains that a work-in-progress version of Mulan had just been screened for Disney's licensing department. And the folks there were very excited by this Mushu brushing his teeth gag. The licensing people saw this scene as, this once-in-a-life opportunity to do a product tie-in with a toothpaste company. In fact, the licensing department already had a brand in mind, Aquafresh toothpaste. But in order to seal the deal, Tony and Barry would first have to agree to change the color of the toothpaste that Mushu was brushing with from white to tricolor, because Aquafresh toothpaste is tricolored. And look, Tony and Barry were conflicted, largely because this is something their boss is asking them to do, and of course you want to make your boss happy, especially when you're both first-time directors of a full-length animated feature, and you kind of want a chance to do another one. But then again, changing the color of the toothpaste that Mushu was using from plain old white to red, white, and blue would kind of shift the focus of the scene. That tricolored element would pull focus and obviously make the scene less about the gag and more about the now very obvious product placement. But then Peter Schneider did this really unusual thing. He followed up the product placement suggestion by saying to Tony and Barry, it's like, look, it's your movie. If you don't think this will help the scene, then don't do it. It's entirely up to you. And just to be clear here, Aquafresh was offering Disney a lot of money for this product placement. More to the point, they were offering to use that clip of Mushu frantically brushing his teeth in a TV commercial that would then go into heavy rotation just as Mulan was arriving at theaters. So, if Tony and Barry said no to the idea of changing the color of the toothpaste that Mushu was brushing with from white to tricolored, they'd be turning down millions of dollars of free advertising for their movie, which could have a direct impact on how well Mulan did at the box office during the summer of '98. in the end, Bancroft and Cook decided in order to keep that moment in Mulan pure and simple and funny, the toothpaste that Mushu was brushing with had to stay white. And to his credit, Peter Schneider respected the decision. He then got on the phone to Disney's licensing people and told them, to pass along a message to Aquafresh, which was, thanks for the product, placement offer, but no, we're going to pass. But here's the thing. The folks at Aquafresh had seen the footage of Mushu frantically brushing. They thought it was so funny. They didn't care about, whether the toothpaste was white or tricolored. That they still wanted to be part of Mulan, which is why for the summer of 1998, Aquafresh did what they offered. They put together this commercial, that ran in prime time and ran in all major markets frequently. Not only that, they supported it with a giveaway where basically, if you bought a specially marked package, I want to say it was a twin pack of Aquafresh Triple Protection, or for that matter, I guess the company also made toothbrushes that were for kids. They were called Flexosauruses, so I guess they had dinosaurs in their base. But if you bought either of those twin packs, you got bundled with them this teeny tiny toy character figure from Mulan. And there were 5 characters in the Aquafresh set. There was a Mushu, there was a Mulan, there was Khan, who was Mulan's horse, the villainous Shan Yu, and then finally another version of Mulan, only this one dressed as a soldier. Again, because these things were bundled with the Flexosaurus toothbrushes. They were safe for kids for over 3 to play with, made of sturdy plastic, and their paint job on these things, and they're tiny. They're maybe an inch tall on a quarter-sized plastic base. Paint job still holds up well today, and I say that because I was just over on eBay, where you can buy a complete set of these Aquafresh Mulan figures for just $24.99, or if you've already got one, or if you just want to get started, you can pick up individual figures for as low as $1.80 a piece. So, which again, as Shelly just pointed out, with that Funko Pop figure for Splash Mountain, with its $500 asking price on eBay, look, again, we all want cool stuff. We all want, fine items, but you don't necessarily have to pay top dollar for cool stuff.
I think what Jim is trying to say is caveat emptor.
So the caveat emptor makes me think of empty calories. And my first Disney collectible was actually one of these premium things. You familiar with the Winnie the Pooh spoon sitters?
Yes.
You ever seen these?
Yes.
Okay. This was something, and again, for me, these remained fascinating because, again, I was a small kid and I had 3 brothers and a sister. And so when you got the time, the prize in the cereal box, you had to move quickly, or it had to be your turn. And Nabisco, and this is what's interesting to me is that Nabisco started putting these things in cereal boxes before there was a Winnie the Pooh movie. In fact, if you collect these things now, there's 7 of them. And I got to tell you, the likeness isn't necessarily the greatest because, again, they were made in '64. At least that's what's stamped on their butts. But there's 7 of them. There's Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, Rabbit, Owl, Kanga, Eeyore, and Christopher Robin. They're made out of durable hard plastic, and they are primary colors. But honestly, they are among the very first Winnie the Pooh related items that Disney Productions ever produced. And again, you can go over to eBay right now and pick up, individual spoon sitters for as low as $4.99. And what's funny is Nancy and I were just down visiting my parents earlier this week, and I was mentioning that we were getting ready to record a new episode. By the way, she says, hi, Shelly.
Hi.
And she said, well, wait a minute. And she goes over and pulls out a baby food jar that is full of, first I had no idea what I was looking at. They were all these 1/2 inch tall make Disney character heads. And she explained that her local grocery chain, Shaw's, has this deal where for every $30 you spend, they will give you one free Disney Best Buddy Micro Pops. And that's with a Z at the end. There's 24 characters in all. And I tell you what, folks, I'll throw these up on Twitter once this show goes live so you can eyeball these. She's got one complete set of the Lion King figures, Timon, Pumbaa, and Simba, and then some loose Disney characters. But it's just, the teenager who's working the register, just sort of, okay, so you spend $100 on groceries. Here's your 3 teeny tiny Mickey heads, and tosses them in the bag. So, who knows in 30 years, much like the Mulan Aquafresh figures, or for that matter, the Spoon Riders, the Winnie Pooh Spoon Riders from Nabisco from back in the 60s. Who knows what these will be going for on eBay.
So I have a question for you. You talked about the nightshirt that Nancy got. What was the latest thing that you got, or things that you got for your collections?
I'm a guy in my 60s, and lately I've been sort of obsessing on my first Disney experiences and what they had there. They've done this series of books with the Disney Archive. They are storybook replicas. Mm-hmm. So if you remember how Snow White opens with the giant white book,
beautiful books, yeah.
Likewise, Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, have the giant jeweled manuscripts that then unfold. But the other one that they offered was From the Sword and the Stone. And that's your favorite. Well, it's the very first one, my animated film, Disney animated film I saw in a theater.
Yeah.
And so, and it just, now mind you, the other one, which I wish I had picked up, when, back in March when the store was still open, but they had, a My Adventure book from Up, the scrapbook that Ellie and Carl, share. And what was great about it is that as you page through the book, they actually had, it's a journal. So they have all these blank pages that you yourself could fill in. But they actually had the final image from Ellie, to the effect of her in the hospital. Thanks for the adventure. Now go have a new one. As soon as I thought that, it's like, wow, what a cool thing that would be to give to someone graduating from high school or college.
Right.
And, but I didn't move quickly enough. And
I'm sure you can pick one up on eBay, Jim.
Of course you can. But again, I'm a flinty, cheap New Englander, and I do not like paying more than I have to. So anyway, okay, folks. So it only took us 4 months, but we finally got a new I Want That out the door. Tell you what, if there's something that you'd like Shelly and I to talk about on a future episode, which we're going to try to get back on a 2-week schedule here, please let us know. Likewise, if you have any tales to share about your own, chase of Splash Mountain figures or that sort of thing, we'd love to hear about it. Till we get the new show out the door, Shelly, where can folks find you?
Well, when there are rumors, I write about them on micechat.com. You can find Disney news kind of generic on pinkmonorail.com. And I'm working on a secret project that's coming out in December.
Ooh, okay. All right. Well, we'll keep talking about that then. Okay, on my side of the fence, we, of course, you mentioned Disney Dish with Len Testa. Len's actually down at Walt Disney World now. In fact, I think today he was in the studios. Just trying to get a sense of what those are like now that they're reopening. In fact, that may be Len calling now.
We'll get to it.
We also have Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor.
Hey,
likewise,
speaking of Drew Taylor and merchandise, we finally ordered the Onward book.
Oh, yes. And in fact, thank you for mentioning that, because I want to say it's Gallery Nucleus is doing an online event on July 25th.
Love Gallery Nucleus.
And what they're going to end up doing is it's Drew and 2 artists associated with the film, and they're going to give a talk about, now mind you, I think I need to buy a $5 ticket in advance to get into this Zoom conference. But they also will, they're going to be signing a book plate, so you can get the 3 autographs of the people taking part of the presentation, which can then go into a copy of Onward, which Gallery Nucleus is also selling. So be sure and check that out. Let's see, we also have Looking at Lucasfilm with Dan Z. We have Universal Joint with Dustin Fuse, and of course the podcast you're listening to right now. Tell you what, folks, if you like what you've heard today with I Want That, if you get over to iTunes and rate and recommend the show, that would be very helpful. And if you really, really, really like what you've heard, if you want to head over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that helps. Michelle, you're on social media, right? You're on Twitter.
Oh, yes. Pink Monorail.
Okay. Go chase that down. Likewise, let's see, Nancy wants me to tell you that you can find us on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over at Facebook, Jim Hill Media News. Look, folks, I apologize about the lag between episodes. Obviously, it's been a very dynamic situation with things changing every day. I mean, just today with the news about, the shutting down of Primeval World at Animal Kingdom, and the stuff we were just talking about. In fact, Hong Kong Disneyland announcing just yesterday that the park and resort it closed as of yesterday. But but again, you got to remember that in that instance, it's the government of Hong Kong that's the majority shareholder there, rather than the Walt Disney Company. So they kind of called the shots as to when that park's closing. But we're going to try to stay on top of all this, Shelly and I, and we promise to be back with a new show soon. So till then, thanks for listening, and happy shopping.